Good morning, Twin Cities. Welcome to your Sunday and welcome to Reckoning with Real Estate, a show about the American dream and building a better real estate company. I'm Paige Kao with the Real Estate Collaborative, here with my colleague Mark Byers. Hey, Mark.
Hello. How's it
How's
going?
this? Still good.
Yeah.
Still good. How about you?
Doing good.
Yeah, we are going to get right to it. This is the second part of a two-part or three-part. It might be three parts
we'll see.
because real estate industry stuff is real meaty, lots to talk about. We are going to talk more about why consumers hate agents, real estate agents, otherwise known as why do consumers have a hatred toward real estate agents. This is an article that was written recently by Wendy Gilch of Housing Rebels. You can find Wendy and all the really impressive work that she does and at sellinglater.com. And, she has so many resources for consumers. And, if you want to find a real estate agent that works outside of the traditional real estate space and does things differently, we're on there. I know there are a lot of other agents and lenders and industry providers that are on there. So consumers who are listening, please check out her website. And for agents who are listening, definitely check out this article. It will make you think about what you're doing and maybe you'll consider doing something differently. But she has 6 reasons in this article of why consumers hate real estate agents. And she also has a lot of disclaimers about this isn't a hate piece. It's really looking at the industry. It's not looking at individuals or people who choose to become a real estate agent. It's really looking at the industry and how it's working against us and against the consumer. So the second reason, we ended the last episode with the first reason, but the second
That's the one where we get fun. Death of 1,000 real.
Oh, yeah.
Shows.
Yeah. The reason number 2, death by 1,000 reality shows. Okay, go, Mark.
I mean, we've all seen it, right? There's every good episode of, right? It's well dressed, charismatic, bringing in fancy cars and all of that sort of
selling
stuff.
Nothing but luxury properties generally.
And it's so easy. It's just like, oh, I made the call and so signed the deal and then we're done, right?
Right.
Yeah,
not helping our profession at all, these reality shows. And she lists a few of them: $1 Million Listings, Selling Sunset. And I've never watched any of these. Have you?
I haven't. No.
Yeah, I haven't either. Selling the OC, Buying Beverly Hills, House Hunters, and Property Brothers. So the names are familiar to me, but I've never watched them because I knew they would make me very angry. But yeah, it makes it look really easy. And it makes it look like it's not only easy, but we're making a ton of money, which just is not the reality.
Yeah, and it also is boiling down the job to some very, low level thing that is so easy to do, and it just doesn't even talk through what it takes to get from point A to closing, right? And so, and I think she mentioned it as well, Tara. It's not really harming the luxury agents that are having all of this. It's harming the everyday agents that work in the normal markets that are very, very competitive with other agents and other buyers and all of the things that we talk about, and the obstacles that can go wrong in a transaction and how many times you have to redo a contract. I mean, it doesn't talk about any of that sort of stuff. It's just fancy cars and all of that stuff. So
and you alluded in the last episode, to the bumps in the road and things that come up during a real estate transaction, and it's the norm.
Yeah, it
really
is.
And do you want to talk about like a recent experience that you've had with a bump in the road?
Well, I mean, there's just always, when you're dealing with homes that require maintenance, especially in Minnesota winters, right?
Yeah, Mark is from Texas, so he's just learning about this whole
We had
winter
the
thing.
opposite. Ours was sun-baked
Yeah, yeah,
problems, air conditioners and,
yeah.
any of those sort of things, which, as this last week, Minnesotans are finding out is a very important piece to make sure that is working, because I've heard there's a lot of problems and those people are busy. But anyways, as you work through all of that, you're just going to have issues with, different appliances or roofs or sewer lines is a very big thing
You've
up
had
here.
a few sewer line issues and a water line issue.
Hmm.
That was fun.
Yeah, there's just so many of those that come up, and I
Yeah.
know coming through this from the consumer side,
Mhm.
I remember a lot of these speed bumps along the way, but the agents that we had, the good ones, would manage a lot of that in the background, and you don't even really realize that's
Right.
happening.
Right. And that's always been like what I've thought of as my job is to almost be a shock absorber,
Hmm.
to use that analogy that certainly if there's something the client needs to know, we need to tell them, but often some of this stuff the client doesn't need to know until after the fact, until after it's resolved. They don't need to lose sleep over it. We lose sleep over it, but they don't need to.
Yeah, and it's just being problem solvers when
Mhm.
those things come in, and the more that you have, I think our partner database is so huge. Found out through this whole thing,
Mhm.
every obstacle has 3 to 5 partners
Yeah, that you
that
have
can
to.
immediately address that. And so you have something come up and you're like, I'm not really, yeah, I know that's a concern, but we'll work through it. And
Mhm.
that's what the consumer ultimately wants to hear, right?
Mhm.
And wants to
Yeah.
know, okay, what does that mean for
You have a
me?
solution.
Right?
Yeah.
Does that mean that I'm not going to get my dream house because
Mhm.
of this? No, we'll work through that.
Yep.
And we've got challenges and all of that.
Yep.
So none of this reality shows the deal is done when the thing
No.
never shows
Yeah.
any of that.
I had a business partner for 10 years, Connie. Hi, Connie. Shout out to Connie Coleman. Hey. Um, and we used to always say that when the problems arose, that that was our time to shine, really,
Mm-hmm.
and it's true.
Yeah.
It's still true. It's always true in any service industry profession, which is, what we do. What was my other thing? Oh, and you mentioned, you have a problem and then there are like 3 or 4 or 5 other partners that you bring in to try to solve the problem. I haven't heard this stat in a while or this number in a while, but there are probably 40 people, something like 40 or over 40 people that are involved in every real estate transaction when you talk about the consumer, the
Mm-hmm.
person buying or selling the home, the agents, their broker, the insurance people, the lenders, the underwriters, the processors, the
Inspectors.
inspectors. I mean, the list goes on and on. And as a real estate agent, we're like the point person
Mm-hmm.
that is trying to kind of manage the whole thing. But as you can imagine, for our listeners, as you can imagine, if you're trying to manage 40 people, I mean, it's tough. We do our best.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes people go go rogue, and then we have to kind of come back in and backfill the problem. But um, yeah, more often than not, you need to anticipate that there are going to be bumps in the road.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Totally.
and we're problem solvers. That's what
Mm-hmm.
we do naturally. I think that's Taylor is part of our team, and she is a problem solver. So, okay, should we go on? So that was number 2. Reason number 2, death by 1,000
Yeah.
reality shows.
And I
Um,
definitely think the next one, reason 3, fits
Wait,
mine.
before we go to
Okay.
reason 3, can we just give a shout out to, I know this is one of your favorite things, the Malibu Realtors on Jury
Oh,
Duty,
yeah.
season
Right.
number 2. Yeah, so we also talk about how realtors are portrayed like in popular culture. And for any of you listening, if you haven't watched Jury Duty season 2, it's really worth it. It's not about real estate realtors, but they do have this whole thing about the Malibu Realtors that is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It fits this very well.
Yeah, it does. Okay, carry on. Reason number 3.
Okay, yeah. So technology made the job easier and the fees didn't change. There's so much baked into this from a technology piece. And I don't know that we'll have time before the break to get through it, but just from an introduction, right? What we know is technology that has affected all of our lives, right? From
Mhm.
the internet to availability on apps and all of that sort of stuff, one would think what it has done is basically given access to find homes really abundant for a lot of people quickly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this earlier. I think that drives competition
Mm-hmm.
compared to the old way, right? How did one before all of this technology find a house? Well, they went
Mm-hmm.
through the agents were doing a lot of the legwork, right? Back in the day, and they were touring homes and bringing stuff back and all this
And
sort of
flipping
stuff.
through the MLS books or the listing books that came out every week. That was way before my time, people, way before my time. But
Right. So
it was
now finding the house is really the easy part,
mm-hmm.
because everybody can do it.
It
Um,
can be, although this shortage of inventory does make it challenging sometimes. But to your
and the driving
point,
of the competition.
you certainly see all the houses online.
Yep.
So they are there.
Right.
The consumer does.
But what I think that is not brought up is that technology piece is where these big capitalist entities are tapping into that big that we talked about last week, the big fee, right? Because all of that is sold back to agents in forms of leads, right? You
We're
click on
talking like
something.
Zillow or Redfin or those sites that are, having us pay money to get leads
Yep.
that then they get a
Your
big,
clicks, how
yeah.
many times you view it. So you do have access to all of that, but it's all getting sold back to agents in some form of. I mean, I've read there's between $1,000 to $5,000 a month per zip code that an agent can buy for these
Mm-hmm.
leads.
Mm-hmm.
You've done it
I
before.
did that about 15 years ago. I did it. Yeah.
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 And so your data, your clicks are being sold back to us, and then you ultimately pay it because all fees go back to consumers.
And I would say it's mostly the newer agents that do this because they're trying to grow their business
Hmm.
and it's a really competitive field. There's so many agents running around in the world.
Yeah.
Every person generally knows a handful of agents, their
Hmm.
brother-in-law, their, cousin twice removed, their friend next door, whatever. There's just a lot of us running around. So how do you get the leads? And so I think it's a lot of the newer agents that do this.
Yeah.
And the leads aren't great
No.
in my experience.
No. And if the
Yeah.
consumer is the one paying for it, then they're just paying for their own bad leads.
Right. Right.
Sort of that paradox.
Right. The vicious circle. All right. That's the end of episode number 2. I think we are going to episode number 3 of Why Consumers Hate Agents. And we will see you next Sunday. You are listening to Reckoning with Real Estate. Have a good week.
Every move you make.
Welcome back to Reckoning with Real Estate. I'm Paige Kale, joined by Mark Byers, and we are talking still about why consumers hate agents. And we left off with reason number 3, per Wendy Gilch of sellinglater.com. Technology made the job easier, but the fees didn't change. What else do you have to say about that, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I think she did a really good job in this whole section about how, and we've talked about it in section 1 with what the compensation is and how that has gone up. And then the question 3, technology made the job easier, but the fees didn't change. She was getting to the point that it's not really self-evident from the outside exactly what the technology does during the transaction to help, right? And we've
Mm-hmm.
talked about that coming in, that it gives them quicker access to finding houses and all of that sort of stuff. And think that what is kind of pulling out here is the legal and contractual expertise that protects the consumers still has a huge piece of this whole. And that's what I've seen, is the amount of everything requires some legal contract of some kind to be signed by all parties.
Yeah.
And it's like, if something is as minor as a date change or a time
Mm-hmm.
change, or an inspection, whatever is going on, anything to do with price, you're getting back on there, doing contracts, making sure it's there because everybody is legally bound to that. And so, as we were talking about those hurdles earlier, right? Navigating the inspections, seeing what the repairs are going to be, working through all of that sort of stuff. The technology isn't really part of any of that the consumer is seeing. They're just seeing, oh, I have access to do this. I can just go write a thing for a house and then go for it. And so I think she did a good job of saying, yeah, it is making it easier. The fees aren't really changing in all of that because we talked about the big ones that are eating that piece of pie, right, and selling back
the
leads.
Zillows and the Redfins
Right.
and those third party. Yeah.
But from what we have to earn in general, right, based on all of that stuff that I mentioned, there is some technology that is helping us from a contracts and doing DocuSign and all of that sort of stuff. But it still doesn't take, the knowledge that an agent has to have to be able to do that.
Yeah. And I do think another kind of point that Wendy's article makes is that is all still true, what you were just talking about, having to have the contractual knowledge and kind of the knowledge of what is the norm and how to navigate these situations and the bumps in the road. But also, as agents, we don't have to sit at our desks and flip through a book every week. We don't have to go on Tuesday realtor tours to look at the new inventory. It's right there at our fingertips, real time. And so maybe the fees should go down a little bit because that part of our job is, quote unquote, easier. But then you bring in the third party companies, the Zillows and the Redfins and all these places that consumers go because they have good websites and good information and lots of information. And they're taking a piece of the pie because there's so much meat on the bone. So how do you kind of cut them out? And there's a lot of talk on LinkedIn and just in the industry in general about these third-party companies and, how they feel like pariahs, kind of predatory. And are they really adding value or are they just siphoning off money and profit and keeping the fees high?
Right. And if they're selling it back to agents and agents are passing that back, it's
to
just
the consumer.
a cycle that keeps coming. So, again, as we were talking about 2 weeks ago about what Rec is trying to do is wade through all of this in a pragmatic way to be more consumer centric. And one, it starts with education. I think that's why we do the show, right? We want to educate out what's going on. We don't want any of this to be hidden. We wanted all the consumers to know all of this that we talk about. And I love talking about it with consumers when they ask, because they're very, they're very knowledgeable. What's going on in all of this? What can you do? Even last week talking with my father-in-law, tell me how that is earned, that $78,000 that's coming. And so
and to be clear, the $78,000 is not earned. I mean, it's real, but it's too much, way too much for the work that's being done.
Yeah. And the more higher up you go on the scale, that's why percentage drives that.
So. Yeah. One thing I want to touch on about the technology too is, so when I started, it was right at the advent of the MLS being online. So I didn't have to look through the books and stuff. But one thing I remember is we did have carbon copies, for contracts. So when you wrote the contract, you wrote it by hand.
Wow.
And then you peeled, I think it was like a 3-ply carbon copy, and then you peeled it apart, and one was to present to the seller's agent, one was for your office. The copies went various places. So that's changed, and it's a lot easier now because we have these things called computers and DocuSign and Authentisign and all the tools where we can just do so much of it from our desk. And one thing that we've talked about recently especially is how that maybe takes some of the humanity away from the real estate transaction. The other thing I can remember doing is going to random parking lots, like a Walmart parking lot, to deliver the earnest money check. And now we have this thing called trust funds where everything can be done electronically and securely. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to go back to the days of, going to the abandoned Walmart parking lot to deliver an earnest money check to another real estate agent. But the point being is there was much more kind of face to face. We also used to, when it was multiple offers, the buyer's agent would go to the house that they wrote the offer on and sit in their car and wait to be called in by the listing agent. And we would present our buyer's offer to the listing agent and to the seller. The seller would be there too.
Wow.
And then we could present our buyer's offer
Huh.
in kind of the best light possible because we're our buyer's advocate
Yeah.
rather than our buyers just being a series of numbers
Yeah.
on a spreadsheet.
Can you imagine having the time to do that today?
Well, we're
Like,
bringing it back, people.
wow.
Mark, I hate.
It would be amazing.
I mean, I think we are going to start giving our clients or sellers the option of maybe inviting that and asking buyers agents if they want to, if it's a multiple offer situation, that they can present at the kitchen table of the seller.
Yeah.
And it really it I get frustrated as an agent because so much, I mean, just there's such a lack of humanity in this huge purchase or sale. It's so emotional for people.
Mm-hmm.
And we've kind of sucked all the humanity out of it.
Yeah. And then with the lack of housing, it just makes the competition so high.
So fierce.
And you
Yeah.
think of every people that write these 5 offers, right? Everybody is so emotionally invested that it wouldn't put an offer in place. And that how many ever is just not getting this house and they've got to start the process over with both them and the agent. And so it's just a really hard circle there.
It is.
And then for the sellers to not even get that opportunity to be like, hey, we've lived in this house for X period of years. This is our family home. We'd love for it to go to the next people. They don't know, right? Could be an LLC that's just putting up, a cash offer that's coming in. There's nothing behind all of that. So yeah, bringing that back would be.
It's become very transactional, incredibly transactional. I mean, we even call it the real estate transaction, which I don't know what a better word for that is. But yeah, I think, these are the things that we talk about and think about at RAC. How can we do things differently? How can we bring more humanity back into the transaction? All right, let's go on to reason number 4. We have a few more minutes in this episode. So reason number 4, go for it, Mark.
All right, ego, bad experiences, and the agent who made it about themselves. And I pulled out a section here that the difference between a good and a bad agent comes
I pulled out that same
consumers
section.
asking the right questions and knowing what to look for. But there's such a big gap. And I think that gap is what she was really pulling out here, because what usually fills that gap in can be personality. And so a lot of times fancy suits and big cars and big personalities fills the gap that makes them feel comfortable, when somebody that is a quieter actually has a way better track record gets pushed aside for these types.
Yeah, I remember when I first walked into my very first Tuesday morning meeting at the first brokerage that I was with. It was Edina Realty on Grand Avenue in St. Paul. And I walked in and literally there were like 30 agents or 20 agents or something in there. And literally my first thought was, oh my God, I have to accessorize more. I need more jewelry and preferably things that have like jewels in them. And I did try it for a few years, and it's not me. So,
yeah.
But to your point, and she goes on to say, so I pulled out the same thing that you just read, but she goes on to say, and this is what you just paraphrased, but yeah, what tends to fill that gap is personality. The confident, well-dressed agent who projects certainty often wins the listing over the quieter agent with a better track record. Real estate rewards self-promotion in a way that few other professions do. And self-promotion, when it becomes a dominant skill in a profession, tends to attract a certain personality type and leave a bad taste in consumers who wanted an advisor and got a performer instead.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's what we're, as you were saying, this is our time to shine. When the problems come out, when the things that we become those things, that's the advisor instead of their performer
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, and I see it, with agents that are that performer, when you get back into it, like you just so much of that back end just falls away, right? I don't
Yeah.
know how many times you get the performer as the agent on the other side and you're having to correct all of their contractual issues.
It happens more often than I'd like. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
just like, well, they've written that wrong. They've left this out. They haven't done this. And they're so
Mhm.
performing, where really you're here to advise through plumbing problems and cracks in
Mhm.
foundations and all of this sort of
Mhm.
stuff. Performer just kind of moves on from all of that.
Right. Right. And doesn't really want to deal with it. And to be fair, and this is the whole point we're talking about and what Wendy is writing about, is the industry perpetuates
Hmm.
all of that. The industry, the reality shows, all of it kind of perpetuates the performer.
Mm.
And people come into real estate and think that's what they're supposed to do.
Right. Yeah.
And then they are in for a rude awakening. But
Yeah.
it's like any other profession. There's a lot of things to do, a lot to it. But
Yeah.
and I think we're going to go for an episode number 3. So I
Sounds
think
good.
this is
Well,
going to be a
see you
3-part.
next week. then.
Yeah, 3-part episode. You're listening to Reckoning with Real Estate, and we will catch you next Sunday. Have a good week, everyone.
Ran through the night.